Thank you, Administrator. Let me begin my questions. This relates to something that Senator Udall has raised. I have raised it by way of letter. I think many of us on the committee has, because so many around the country are realizing the challenges that our communities are facing when it comes to PFAS contamination. In my state, we've got communities that we're hearing from, like Utqiagvik, Fairbanks, Dillingham, Gustavus, where they're seeing groundwater that has been contaminated with PFAS, largely due to the use of this fluorinated firefighting foam. So you've released this PFAS action plan. There's some promises out there with regards to declaring certain compounds as hazardous, but can you give the committee some estimate in terms of EPA's timeline for listing PFAS or any of the compounds as hazardous substances, and really what are these comprehensive steps? You've indicated in your testimony here this morning that there's going to be a media rollout. What are we going to see?
Senator, first of all, I want to assure you and the committee that while we were developing the hazardous waste for PFAS, PFOA, and the different compounds, as well as looking at the groundwater standards and looking to include it under TRI for releases, we are still enforcing. We're enforcing our health advisory of 70 parts per trillion. We have taken, I believe, 8 enforcement actions along with the states, and we've assisted the states and local communities in dozens of other enforcement actions. Where we see PFAS, where we find it, where it's a threat to drinking water, we're ensuring that it's cleaned up. We're actually using state-of-the-art GIS mapping technologies to determine where we believe it is. We know where the chemicals were produced, in large part in Parkersburg, West Virginia, as well as Cape Fear, North Carolina. And we also know the areas where it was used the most. A lot of airports, Department of Defense facilities. So we're using our GIS tracking to map where we believe, laying on top of groundwater and drinking water systems, to identify the communities that may be at risk, and then helping them look to see if they do have a problem with their drinking water. And where we are finding it, we are enforcing. So we're not stopping enforcement of cleaning up PFAS and PFOA where we find it while we work on additional tools. We have a number of tools that we already are using, such as the health advisory of 70 parts per trillion. At the same time, our research office is doing more research on identifying where the chemicals are, identifying which types. There's over, I believe, 2,000 different PFAS, PFOA substances, long chain, short chain. We're trying to determine which of those would be have the most health risk. It's also important to note that the cleanup technologies differ depending on the type of PFAS and PFOA chemical compound itself. We can't use the same cleanup technology for all of the PFAS, PFOA compounds. I've been at our RTP lab in North Carolina and met with our researchers there. I've met with our researchers in some of our regional labs, and last week I was at our Cincinnati lab where they're doing some groundbreaking research on how to clean up the PFOA, PFAS chemicals, and how to identify where they are and how to identify which ones are the most harmful to the public health. So we're doing. We're setting the standards. We're working with the states and other agencies that have standards and other health advisories for PFAS, PFOA. We're still enforcing our health advisory. We're actually actively looking to see where it may be to help those communities. And we're also conducting important research that will help us not only identify, but identify which ones are the most harmful, and also identify how we clean up the best technologies to clean them up when we find them.
Well, I appreciate that update. It is something that the folks that I'm talking to are like, we know that we have a serious issue here, but how do we even get started? So being able to identify, map it, and obviously know how to address it is going to be critically important going forward. I know you're going to have other questions on that.